Welcome the session, the last session for this course. And in the last class, we looked at some things on DAX. That was meant to be the concluding part of DAX, but I remember we didn't touch on some things. So we looked at some time intelligence calculations. And if I remember clearly, I think we stopped on, okay, maybe this was where we stopped. We looked at, let me see the measures here, totals year to date, totals quarter to date. Okay. All right. So very quickly, I just want to mention this before I proceed. Yes, I'm happy that those of us on the call, we are not new to this space. We understand how things run in this space very well. But just to serve the purpose of reminder is that we know that for most of these things that you learning, it requires essentially has to do with we making sure that we practice as much as we can, because it's only when we start practicing, it's only when we start getting our hands dirty on some of these things that we will be sure to have understood this concept. And it is at that point that we would know what exactly do we have challenges with. When many of these things are done in the classroom, it's usually presents itself as though it's clear, direct, and simple. But when we begin to do things on our own, trying to replicate the learnings that we had in the classroom, that's sometimes when some difficulties would set in. And that's only when we would understand whether we would be sure whether we actually did understand anything in the classroom or not. So I want to use this medium to implore us again to try as much as possible to lay our hands on this, practice as much as we can. And just for the relationship I have with the city, normally when I have classes like this, after the classes, we are done with our contracts. So that's the basic thing really. But because of my relationship with the CTO, I will be with us. Yes, our classes end today, but I will be on our group till the end of this month, January. So which means between today and the 31st of January, if you're working on anything on your learnings, practicing, and you have challenges, you can bring those up and we'll see how to resolve them. But as soon as we get into next month, God willing, I would exit the group, which means that would be the end of from the entire contract as a whole. So in summary is we have about a month that we can use to practice, and whatever challenges come our way, we can bring it up, and so that we can look at that and see how we can better improve our skill set on reporting with Power BI as a whole. I really do hope that we would utilize the opportunity that we have in the space of say 30 days or thereabout. All right, so getting back to this, we have when we talk about DAX as a whole, I mentioned to us that we have different kinds of result set that we can get whenever we run any query or any expressions with DAX. It's either you're getting a new table as your result, or you're getting a new column as your result, or you're getting a measure as your result. So when you have a new table or a new column, those are called calculated tables or columns. And there are specific functions that would give birth to such results. So for instance, if you looking at getting a result of a new table. You want to get a new table out of an existing table in your data model. You could be using a function such as values, such as distinct. You could be using filters. You could be using calendar auto, and all of these some similar calculation, add columns, similar functions. All of this would result into a new table for you. The second kind of result is a calculated column. And this essentially are the kinds of calculation that when you run them, it results, you have an existing table, you need an additional column on that existing table. Then you can go on to add a new column, write an expression that would define what the result you want to see is like. And when that is executed, it results into an additional column for you that you will see physically on that particular table. The last kind of calculation or result you can get is the measures. And I mentioned to us that measures are what would not result into a table for you, or what would not result into a new column for you. You don't see the result physically. You don't see the result immediately until you add that particular calculation to a visual. So when you drop it on a visual, that is when you have it rendered, and it's only at that time that you will see what exactly the result of the calculation is. And when we talk about measures as a whole, there are three kinds of measures. So you have the anchor measures, you have the time intelligence, and you have the variances. The anchor measures, they are the kind of measures that drive every other measures. So they are and they're usually your aggregators. So for those of us that are coming from SQL background as well, you understand what we mean by aggregators. So aggregators, you're doing the sum, average, mean, max, all of these that you can do in your select statement. So the aggregators, they are your anchor measures. So when you do equal to sum, you supply a column that you want to add up the values in, and then that result into something for you. So that is an anchor measure that you have. And this is called an anchor measure because if you want to now go on to do to do a time intelligence calculation, and by time intelligence, what we mean is that you're trying to restrict your calculation to a time period. For instance, normally you have calculated the entire revenue, so you know what the total revenue is. But this revenue now, for some reasons, you want to restrict it to the revenue for last 10 years. You want to restrict it to that to say probably there is a requirement that would need you to reference that particular value of that particular period. Then what you need to do is to do a time intelligence calculation. But remember that your time intelligence calculation would always stem out of your anchor measure. So your anchor is the driver. So you want to do the sum, total revenue for last year, for instance. The last year there is the time intelligence thingy because it is with that you are restricting your calculation to a particular period, which is the last year. But remember that you're still doing a total revenue last year. That's what you want to do. So your total revenue is still the sum of your revenue, but you're adding a clause of time to it to say that, okay, DAX, what I want you to do is calculate the total revenue, but go 1 year backwards. And that's what led us to the kind of calculations that we did when we looked at the previous year, the previous quarter, previous month, previous day, and all of those kinds of calculations. So whatever calculation we're doing that has some elements of time restrictions in it, then that calculation is a time intelligence calculation. So very quickly, I just want to give one more example on the time intelligence bit, and then we look at variances. So, and the reason why I want to do that is if we look at what we have done here, for instance, let me see if I have, this is total transaction. Let me expand this. This is total transaction. Let me look at what this is. Total transaction. Okay, so okay, we did total quarter to date. Okay, this is previous year's sales. And all right, so we have previous year's sales here. And how did we calculate our previous year's sales? So what we did was just to have, we use our calculate function. Remember the calculate function? That is what you use to alter the filter context. And then we passed in our total sales, which is just our normal sum of sales. And we asked it to go to the previous year. Then we supplied our calendar. But the issue with this is this. Let me go here. I would add a new table. And then I would come here to select my calendar. Where's my calendar? My date table. So I'll select the year. And then I will go on to add the previous year's sales. Previous year's sales. Okay, let me be sure that. Okay, this is here. So if I do this, okay. So let me see what calendar this one is using. Calendar date, so not the date. So where is calendar date? All right, so I'll select the year and then I'll select my previous year's sales. Okay, so I'll just quickly go here to increase the size, make this. All right, so now we have this to be the total sales for the previous year. Let's add the actual total sales as well. So that we use that to compare to what the previous sales is. Okay, so this is our total sales, actual. So now when we are on 2015, it returned the previous year total sales, which is for 2014. Perfect. This is looking very nice. This is previous year. But immediately I do something. If I come here to my calendar table, and for some reasons, if I bring my month and I add it here, and then you would notice that for my previous year's sales, it returned the same value all through for all the months. So for 2015, what we expect is that it should return the total sales for 2014. But when we added the month filter to this, we expect that it should further break down this 484,000 by what the previous month sale is. So for 2015 January, it's meant to actually return 2014 January's figure. So 14,236 is what we are meant to see here, not the total sales for the entire year. And you see that that is the experience. When we get to 2016, it returned the total sales for 2014 again. It didn't break it down by the month. The reason why this is happening is because of the fact that previous year calculation only considers the year. It only keeps filters on the year. So any other thing aside from the year, it's not able to break down by those dates attributes. So if I go on to my dates table again and I bring in my quarter, if I bring in my quarter, I drop it here. Notice that the same thing will still happen with the quarter. So even when we are on another quarter, it's still not able to break it down. So it's still returning the same values. So how then do we salvage this situation? So what we can do is that we can just switch the function that we are using. So I'll go onto my fact sales table. If you remember, you do a right click and you say new measure. And then here, I would say that I want to do total sales, same period last year. So it's the same thing, I'll calculate, and then I'll call on my total sales measure, And instead of doing a previous year, previous month, previous quarter, or previous day, what I would do is I would do a same period last year. So the same period last year, what it does is that whatever period that we have on our table that is bringing in that filter, it will consider it and then it will return the values accordingly. So it's very much dynamic, unlike we having the previous year, which is fixed and returning the same values even when we are at the month level. So this is asking for the date. So I'll just call on my calendar date and I'll close my brackets for this. So just take these guys out for the moment. So I have my here. I'll go on to bring my total sales same period last year. See now that we have our values. So it's returning the values for same period last year. Excellent. Then I would go on to now add my other data attributes. So I can come here to add my quarter. And okay, let me put quarter of year so that we see the Q1, Q2. So you see now that for 2014, so we have this, okay, let me add the actual year total sales, the actual total sales so that we see those differences clearly. So I'll put this here. So now this is 2014. Initially, before adding the quarter of the year, this is what we have. 2014 total sales, 2015 total sales, and the total sales same period last year. So it's filtering at the year level now. It's returning what the lump sum for 2014 is at this level. For 2016, it's returning this and like that. As soon as I go on to add my quarter of the year to this, you see that the filtering changes immediately, which means for Q1, it has now broken down the entire sum that we saw for the year. It has broken it down into the quarters. And for the total sales same period last year, it returned accurately what the same period last year was. So now for Q1 2015, it returned Q1 2014. If I go on to pick my month as well, and I drop it here, we expect that it goes on to further break this down. So now for Q1 2015, January, it returned 14,236, which was the value for Q1 2014, January. So this is a more dynamic way to handle whatever filters. So if you're working in a scenario whereby you think that probably you have you would have some other date attributes included on your report, and you want to use a single table to manage all of those, then what you could do is to use the same period last year instead of using the previous year, previous day, and previous, because this is much dynamic and would accommodate whatever date attributes you're bringing into this. So I just thought to mention this to us so that we are aware of how this runs. So now we go into the last part of the kind of measures that we can create, which is the variances. So variances, they are comparisons. So as I get on with this, please let's launch our Power BI, and so that we can have we'll have an exercise to do very quickly. So variances are comparisons. And by comparison, what it means is that we are trying to, now we know what the total sales for this year is, for instance. We know what the total sales for last year was. How then can we decipher what the difference between the total sales for last year and the total sales for this year is? The difference between that, the kinds of calculation that manage that, is what is called variances. So variances allows us to do some comparison between our values to see what the difference is or what the growth is. So when we look at the difference between two values, number difference, so it gives us -10 or it gives us +50, that is an absolute variance. But when we look at the difference, and it gives us something of a percentage, then that is a relative variance. So let's quickly look at a few of those. And like I said, please, in case we missed that, let's launch our Power BI desktop, and we have our files opened. So I'll just take some things out of this chart for the moment. So what I want to do, what's the difference between total sales this year and the total sales last year, what increase in sales from last year to this year. So what I will do is I'll add a new measure, very simple kinds of calculation now. And so I would say year on year variance. So for this, I would say what's the total sales for this year minus total sales for last year. Remember our total sales for last year? Maybe that was, okay, yeah, we can also use same period last year. So to adjust to what the filter is. And here, so I can go on to now pick my year-on-year variance. Let me add it to this. And very quickly, we can see now that for 2015, it says that the variance is minus 13,000. So this year we made less than what we made last year. That's what this is saying. So there was a drop in our sales coming from last year to this year. But in 2016, we did excellently well because last year we made 470,000. This year we made 609,000. So we did perfectly well. So this is a year-on-year variance. So let's assume now that I want to do a variance percentage. And the variance percentage is, I want to see what's this 13,000, what is the growth, or what percentage does this represent when we compare it to the previous year's sales. So I'll come here again, I'll do a right click, and then I would say year-on-year percentage variance. And for this, so instead of doing just an absolute and number variance, what I would do instead is I can say that my total sales for this year minus the total sales for last year, then I will say divide this by the total sales for last year. So we're comparing to this total sales for last year. Well, the rule of is a BODMAS that they call it. The rule applies in the sense that if I leave it this way, I will get some unexpected result because we know that division would come before subtraction. So it will divide this first, and the result of this is what will be subtracted from the total sales. So which means if we want to guide this calculation properly, we want this subtraction to happen first before it goes on to divide by this. So I'll put a bracket here so that now total sales minus total sales same period last year will happen first before it gets divided by this. And so if I run this, and then I go on to add this to our report. So now we have this as the result. So now it says that this is minus 0.03. And how do we manage this to ensure that it comes in percentage? So you just have to click on the measure itself. Once you do that, you see a measure tools tab, and you can come to the format here and say that you want to format this as percentage. And now we'll say the percentage to say that in 2015, we had a drop in our total sales by 2.83%. And in 2016, our sales went up by 29.47%. This is a more interesting analytics than to say that we had an increase in 138,000. 138,000, it wouldn't give us a clear picture of what the growth was. did how much more of sales did we make? That won't give us a clear picture of that. But when we say that we had a growth in our sales figure to the tune of 29%, that gives them a clearer picture. So let's very quickly now, let's work on this. So let me put down on the chart. So we are to calculate the months on months variance, and for the variance you do an absolute and you do the relative. So the absolute is the number variance, the first one I did, and then the relative is the percentage variance. So let's do that quickly in say 5 to 10 minutes. Once you're done, let me know that you're done. Please let me know when you're done so you can type on the chart. Anybody's done? Let's try to wrap up in say 4 minutes, please. So let's see what. All right. Any luck, Wally of the summit? So that I still can't hear anybody. Hello? Anybody hear me?
Hello. Yeah, okay.
Okay. So any luck?
None.
So that I didn't hear that.
I say none from my.
Okay, you didn't attempt it at all. What's the challenge?
I think I'm lost somewhere.
You did what?
I think I'm lost somewhere.
But you didn't mention it.
Yeah, I don't want to.
You don't want to do what?
I don't want to interrupt the section.
Oh, okay. Wale, anything? Okay, maybe one is not here. All right. So we'll go on now to, so this is essentially what I expected. So let's assume that you want to, the question was to do what again? Let me see. So I want to do month-on-month variance. That's what I want to do. So it's actually the same thing. The same way would work. Since the calculation that we used here the same period last year, so it will work. So if I just instead of from the year, if I bring in the month here, so you see now that it's for the month on month. Okay, I still need to put my year to make that to see the effect of that. Yeah. So this is 2014. We don't have a previous month for 2014 January, so the variance will be this and this. But let me just quickly explain something. So I'll take out the month for now. Here we see that we have infinity. And the reason why there's infinity here is because we are doing a division by 0. So remember that the formula says that total sales, which is 484, minus total sales same period last year, which is 0. So that will give us 484 divided by 0. So that's why we have an infinity here. This would not look nice on your report. So how do we manage this? So what we can do is, so I'll just copy this, and then I will write this measure to accommodate for those blanks. So what I will do instead is I will say year-on-year variance, year-on-year percentage variance 2. So what now, we need to test some conditions. And the conditions will be that whenever any one of these is blank, if the total sales is blank, such as in this case, because even here that we have a variance of minus 100%, this is not representative of the business, because at this point, we do not have an actual sales yet. So it will be wrong to return a value for this. So what we'll do is whenever any one of this is blank, we just want it to return a blank. Otherwise, it should go on to do the calculation. So for 2015 to 2017, it will go on to do the calculation. 2014, because we have a blank here, it should return a blank. 2018, because we have a blank here, it should return a blank. So I would say that if, just like you do in Excel, if it's blank, but because we want to test for two things that would be blank, so I would say or is blank. If it's blank, my total sales. And the second thing that I want to test if it's blank is this total sales same period last year. So what this is doing is it will first of all test whether the total sales is blank, which for 2018 it will return a true. And then it will also test for the same period last year, which will return a false because this is not blank. So if this is blank, what should happen? I want this to return a blank. It shouldn't return any value. So I can put this, or I can say blank as a function. It should return blank, which means don't do anything. Otherwise, if none of this is blank, then I want you to go on to perform my calculation. So what is the calculation again? That is what I copied out. So I'll close my bracket here and I'll hit enter. So all things being equal, so if I add that to my measure now, so I'll pick my year-on-year variance 2 and I'll put it here. So now let me just go on to format this. And so now we can see for 2014 that we have a blank, that our same period last year is blank. It didn't do the calculation, so it's returned nothing for it. And the same thing for 2018, where we have our total sales to be blank, it's returned nothing for it. So this would not confuse your end users. So when they see a blank, it's obvious to them that, okay, we didn't have a calculation performed here because probably there was something that there was a particular value that we didn't have. And for every other years that we had complete set of values, it went on to perform the calculations. So this is variance calculation. And variances are just ways of managing comparisons. So you're trying to see what the difference between two set of values are, or what the growth or the drop has been between two set of values. So remember that you're either doing an absolute variance or a relative variance. Absolute means you're doing a normal variance, A minus B. But when you're doing a relative variance, you're doing A minus B and comparing it to B. So to say that, okay, what is the difference and compared to a particular previous value. So that is what you're doing when you're doing variances. So assuming now that you are done creating your report, remember that for most of your report, you are not creating those reports for yourself. They are not meant for your own consumption alone. Usually you would be creating reports for stakeholders in the business. So you have a report that you're giving out to stakeholders, they're looking at those reports, they are using them to make some business decisions. So if that is the case, when you're done creating your report on Power BI desktop, you need to think of how you can share your report with people. And for you to share your report with people, the very first thing you need to do is to publish your report. And when you want to publish your report, first is you have to be signed in. So if you look at my top right, you see that I'm signed in. So you have to be signed in into your Power BI account. So I don't know if any one of us you have created a developer account. If you haven't, you need to do that before you'll be able to share your report. Since I think we mentioned that you don't have access to Power BI on your tenant. So you may need to create a developer account that will give you access to a pro license for Power BI. And so you can use that to practice this when you want to do it. So once you're signed in, you can come here to the Home tab and you see a publish button here. So if I click on publish, it will ask me to save. So I'll save. Once I have this saved, then it will ask me where do I want to publish my report. So reports are usually published onto what is called workspaces. See your workspace as your platform where you want to host that report. So you want to host the report somewhere, and it is on from that platform that people will begin to have access to your report. So that is what this means. There are two kinds of workspaces. It's either it's a personal workspace or it is a shared workspace. You can have a personal workspace or you have a shared workspace. Personal workspace means it is personal to you. Whatever you put there, nobody else will see it. It's meant for you alone. Shared workspace means whatever you put there, anybody that has access to that workspace would see it. And the way this works is usually for most of the groups or most of the channels that you have on Teams, they will have workspaces on Power BI service. So which means if, for instance, at Pro Eyes, you have a workspace for developers, you have a channel for developers, for instance, on Microsoft Teams. If you go to your Power BI, if you are signed in with your Pro Eyes credentials, you'll notice that there will be a workspace for developers, except it is configured otherwise. So if you have a channel for accounts, a channel for operations, a channel for general discussion, most of those will become workspaces on your Power BI service, which means if, for instance, Wale and Sadiq, they belong to developers workspace, developers channel on Teams. When Sadiq uploads a report, publishes a report to the developer workspace on Power BI service, Wale would be able to see that report. If Wale goes to Power BI service, signs in, goes to that workspace, he will be able to see it. But Samad, that is not part of that channel on Teams, when it logs on to Power BI service, it won't have access to that workspace. So you will not be able to see the reports there. That is a shared workspace. But a personal workspace is such that Abdul Samad has a workspace that is personal to him. Whatever report Abdul Samad posts or publishes onto that workspace would only be accessible to Abdul Samad alone. Olawale would not see it, so they could not see it. So that's the difference. So you need to think around how you want to share your report. So if you want a report just to be accessible to people by default, wherever they are, on Teams, you want to be able to access the report, then you can look for a workspace which they all belong to, publish the reports there, and they can go directly to consume the report from there. Otherwise, put it in your personal workspace, and from there you can then go on to share privately with people that would access the report. So now, I will select my workspace. So every other thing that we see here, this consulting, Debron training, all these are shared workspaces. So I have quite a few of them. So I have my workspace and I'll select. So this will publish the report to Power BI service. And once this is on the service, I'll get a notification that it's now on the service. Okay, so we got a message success, and then it gives us a direct link to open the report. So if I click on this will open on my browser. So blah, blah, blah. Let me see what could be happening. My sign-ins, what's this? Microsoft Authenticator. All right, so this is opening now. And now I am on the Power BI service. So this is all my report. See that I have all the pages of report here, page 1 to 9, just like I have on the desktop. So everything has been pushed to the service. And whenever you're publishing a report, you are publishing two things. You are publishing the report and the data set that is feeding that report. So let's note that. So whenever you are pushing a report to the Power BI service, it goes with the report itself and it goes along with it the data set. So I'm back here now, and there I have all the pages of my report here. But just a quick look at what the service is like. So first, this is Power BI service. So this is the same experience you will get if I go to powerbi.com. So what I would just ask me is to sign in. Okay, so it's even already recognizes that I'm signed in. So here I have some tabs here. See that we have workspaces here, and I have my workspace. So if I go to workspaces, these are all the workspaces that we saw when we wanted to publish the report. And if I come to my workspace, here I would see everything that has to do with things that I've personally pushed onto my private workspace. So I'll go back to home for the moment. And now that I'm on home, so now that I'm on home, you'll see a few things about what you've done recently. So these are some reports that I published here. Some of these were not published by me. You see now that this one is by a colleague, but this was published onto a workspace that I have access to. That is why I have this here. And now this is what I just posted, Pro ICE model. It says a minute ago. So I just published this, but if I go to my workspace and then I try to, let me just scroll down to Pro ICE. So you see Pro ICE model, you see another Pro ICE model. So the first one you see is a report. The second one here is the data set. So whenever you are publishing a report, which is this, and alongside it will be the data set. But let's now assume that I want to check on this report. So I just come here, I'll click on this, and this will open the report for me. And this report now, the essence is I want to share this with people. I want people to be able to access it. I want them to be able to see. I want them to be able to consume the report. I have a couple of options. One is if share, chat in Teams, get insights, subscribe, edit, a couple of things. I can come directly to the share button. If I click on this, I can type directly email address of people that I want to share this with. But look at this. This message is very important. It says people in your organization with the link can view and share, which means if I type in Wale's email address here, that answers at proice.com or something. Yes, Wale would get a notification that a report was shared with him, but Wale would not be able to access the report. The report will not open for Wale. The reason being that Wale is outside of my organization, so Wale won't be able to see the report. And that is one excellent feature that Power BI has. So Power BI has some high level of security in the sense that you can always manage who is meant to say what if you do your things diligently. So if I'm using this particular route, then what I need to do is whatever email address I'm supplying here has to be an email that answers my company's domain. It has to end on at dbaronconsulting.net. Otherwise, the individuals that I'm sharing the report with that owns those email addresses, they will not be able to see the report. That's if I want to share directly from here. Otherwise, I could say that I want to copy the link. So I click on copy link, and this link I can share with people. So if I drop this link on the chat now, I wanted to try out, but I'm sure it will open for us. So let's try it out. So I have the link on the chat. Let me know when you have checked on that. So let me know. Just click on that link. Let me know if it opens for you. I want to be sure of your experience. But what should happen is you shouldn't be able to access the report. But just confirm.
From my end, it's just loading.
It's still loading, okay. Let me know when it's up. There should be a message for you that you're not on Gibran Consultants tenant. Anybody else tried it? Wale Sadiq?
Hello.
Hello, Wale.
Okay, it's not open. What it only shows is I should create an account.
Okay, it asks you to create an account.
Yes.
Okay, so the point is you won't be able to open it because the report was published to a particular workspace, and only people who have access to the workspace within the organization will be the ones to be able to view the report. So now I'll close out of this. That is one way to share reports. So which means if you're building a report that will be used by people within the organization, after you publish it, you can just come here to share, put their email address, send them an email directly from here. They'll get a link to that report and they'll be able to open it. Or you copy link and share with them. You can also post on Teams right from here. The other way is assuming now that if we want to share report with people outside of our organization, just like for you guys now, I want to share a report with you and I want you to be able to view it. So what I can do instead is I can come here to File and I will come here to Embed Report. So I'll say Embed Report, and here you can actually embed on SharePoint, you can embed on the website or portal, but the option I will use is Publish to Web. Know that to embed a website or to embed on SharePoint, you need a license to do that. But I'll come here to Publish to Web, so I'll click on that. And now it just gives some sort of a warning, blah, blah, blah. I will say should publish. And here the report has been published. So if I copy this link and I come here to the chat again and I post this link. So please, let's try out that link again and let me know what your experience is.
Hello.
Hello, Wally.
Hello, did you just share any other link again? I can't see.
Yes, on the chat. So there are two links on the chat now.
Hello, boss. Will it
Wally.
also open on mobile?
It showed.
Okay.
It showed. So try it. So most likely to open on your browser. it will redirect to your browser to open.
Okay, yeah, it's open.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
It's open. It's open.
It's opened. Excellent. So that's the difference between the ways of sharing. So when you want to share with people outside of your organization, you know that you can't use the traditional share button here. You need to come to File, then come to Embed Report, do Publish to Web, and that's the only way you can share with people outside of your organization. But you need to be cautious with this. Whatever report you've shared with people outside of your organization, you can't retrieve access. So what I dropped on the chat now, if there was sensitive information there, anybody with a link will continue to have access to it. There is no way you can really, for now, retrieve or restrict access to that particular report. Maybe except if you take it down. So if you delete it from the Power BI service, probably that's the only way to manage that. But it may not be something you really want to take chances on. So another thing very quickly is this. As we are here on the Power BI service, if for instance you notice something that, this particular visual, maybe you want to format it a bit more, you want to change the color, but remember that this is on the Power BI service now. How do you manage that? So what you can do is to come to the edit button here, and this will give you an experience that is similar to what you see on desktop. So see now that we have the visualizations pane, we have the fields pane, and we can edit the chart. So this chart here, I can now go on to format. I can go to general, I can go to effects, and get a background color. Let me say I want to give you this color here, this, okay? So I've edited it here right from the Power BI service. And when I'm done, you just see a button here that says save. So I can click on save. And now this has been saved. So, and then there should be a button to go back to the report view. Let me see. Anyways, so I can just come back here to my workspace and I'll open the report price, and we should have that detail here. So now it's edited, change the background right from the Power BI service. Because usually when you publish report to the Power BI service, there is a disconnect. The report on the data set goes straight to the Power BI service. So it's now disconnected from the Power BI desktop. And the implication of that is this change that we made here will not reflect on our Power BI desktop. It will not reflect because they are not connected in any way. So if you have made so much changes, for instance, on the Power BI service, you have done a lot of formatting and you want to get the actual file back on your Power BI desktop, then what you can do is come to File and say download this file. So if you download this file, this would download, it says a copy of your report and data.pbix. So this would download a PBIX file, and then you'll be able to now open that on your Power BI desktop again. So now, let's quickly look at something. So I'll go back to my workspace, and then I'll come here to my Pro Eye. So now you see that I have a Power BI file that I can go on to now launch. So that is how to recover whatever changes you have made on the service, and you want to keep working on that on your desktop, then you need to just download the file and go on to keep working on it. So the implication, or the only limitation you have with you working or with you building your report on the Power BI service is that you won't, as at now, you won't be able to write DAX. So you can make sure changes to your format, you can add new charts, you can take off some charts, do a lot of things, but you won't be able to write DAX. So which means if for whatever reason you want to be able to write some more DAX and then have those implemented in your report, you need to download the file again, write your DAX on desktop, then republish the report to your Power BI service. You can ask it to override what's there. We'll get an option to do that. So now, if I come here, for instance, but before I go to this, let me just quickly go back to my report. Many times for stakeholders, they still want you to present your report in Power BI, sorry, in PowerPoint. So how do you manage that? How do you ensure that you have built your report in Power BI? Some still want you to present in PowerPoint. How can you have your Power BI integrated with PowerPoint? So what you can do is, let me open a PowerPoint file. So I can come here with my PowerPoint, but a couple of options. You can actually come here to share, and then if I see PowerPoint from here, it gives me a link, or I can ask it to open in PowerPoint. So let me say ask it to open in PowerPoint, and let's see what we would have. So this is loading now. All right, so we have our report here. You have the pages of your report. Say you can go, and it's very interactive, just like what you would have seen in from the service or from the desktop as well. But you need to be aware of something, and that is the fact that you need to have quite enough navigation buttons to move from a page to the other. So a page that does not have navigation might be the page that you eventually stand on. So now we don't have a navigation on this page that will take us to some other pages. So that's why it seems as though we won't be able to move off this particular page. But sometimes when you go this route, it may not work for you. So what you need to do first is, if I go to my blank PowerPoint, Power BI has an add-in that you may have to install. So if you come to Insert and you come to Get Add-ins, so by the way, your PowerPoint, you have to be on Office 365. So if I search for Power BI, so you see we have a Microsoft Power BI. So this one, you just need to click on Add. So you go to Add, you add that as an add-in. So because I do already have it, that's why it came in directly for me. Otherwise, you may have, it will prompt you to download, might prompt you to restart your PowerPoint or restart your system for the installation to be complete before this can happen. So but now I have this. So if I take this off now, so assuming it's installed, I can go to my add-in, I can click on Power BI. So now I want to add Power BI to my report. Then that is when the link that we saw on the Power BI service will become useful. So I'll come here to share, I'll say PowerPoint, and then I'll just copy this link. So once I copy this link, I can come here with a link and I'll paste, and I'll say insert. And when I do this, then I will get an option, I will say the report. So the report is here live. All right, and this report is connected to the Power BI service, which means whenever we have an update on the Power BI service, it's expected that the update will reflect on the PowerPoint. So that is how to manage and share report with people. So the very last thing that I want us to look at before we call it a wrap is if I come back here to my workspace, and then I come to Pro Eyes. Remember that I mentioned that we have the report and we have the data set. So let's now assume that we have new data sets that we want to refresh the report with. How can we manage that? So normally on your Power BI desktop, you can come here to Home and you can say refresh. So when you do that, this will go back to all your data sources, will do all the refresh, and then it picks whatever new data set is in those directory that you have specified. So that works. But now that we have published our reports to the service, so if there were new data sets added to our directory, it will only be refreshed on the desktop. So it's not connected to the service. So the new data is not pushed to the service. So what we can do instead is to refresh from the service. And there are two ways to refresh on the service. It's either you are refreshing your data set manually, or you are scheduling refresh on the service. So you can schedule refresh to happen daily, weekly, monthly, depending on what the frequency you decide on. But if you're scheduling refresh daily, you have a maximum of 8 refreshes that can happen daily if you are using the Pro license for Power BI. So which means you are paying Power BI $10 per user per month. So you'll be able to refresh 8 times in a day. That's the maximum if you're on a Pro license. But if you want more than that, then you need to use a premium license, which would allow you 48 refreshes every day. So you can do 48 refresh every day. So which means you can refresh every 30 minutes in a day. That is possible using Power BI premium license. But premium license, it's typically for, if you're buying for users, I think you'll be paying about $40 per user per month. But if you're buying dedicated capacity, you'll be paying about $5,000 per month or so. So if I come here to my data set, the first one is a report. You see it tagged report. The second one is a data set. And I click on this refresh button. So I expect this refresh to fail. So yeah, it says that it's refreshed at 9:28, but there was an error with your data set. So it didn't refresh completely. It says schedule refresh has been disabled. Please try again later, blah, blah, blah. So we need to configure the refresh first. So what I would do is I'll come to the ellipsis for the data set, come to the ellipsis here. Then I'll come to settings. So go to the dataset settings to configure something. So here you can give a description, do some things, blah, blah, blah. And then I can come here to data source credential. And now I can come here to edit credentials. So for this, I would say privacy level settings for data source, blah, blah, blah. Can set this to organization, and I can say sign in. So one thing you need to understand when it comes to you running scheduled refresh on Power BI is that it depends on what your data source is. If your data set or your data source is sitting right on your system, it means that you would need something that would establish a connection between the Power BI service and your system. And what does that for you is what is called a gateway. So it is a gateway that you use to create a connection between your Power BI service, which is online, and your data source that is sitting on your system. But if your data set is sitting online as well, maybe you're using SharePoint as a data source, or you're using maybe OneDrive, or some other data or some other sources that are online on Microsoft ecosystem, then you don't really need a gateway to refresh. So if you do your scheduled refresh, it should work normally. So let's wait a bit for this to come up. So we need this to come up, then we would see how to complete that. So we're wrapping up already. If you have questions, please do ensure to ask.
Hello.
Yes, please, Wally.
Okay, I think during our last class, you mentioned something about security. So I don't know. I want to believe all the ones we'll be going through for like 30 minutes ago, their security permissions.
Yes, in a way, but there's still some other parts of security that we've not touched. Row level security, essentially, but we'll do very little of that after now. And then other parts of it might be things that you would keep working on because it needs you to understand your DAX properly, which I don't think we've paid so much attention to yet. So, but once I'm done with this now, yeah, in just like say 5 minutes or thereabouts, we'll look at that on the desktop and see how it works. So just hold on a bit. Thanks for bringing that. Okay, so why this is coming up, so let me just go to that. So like I mentioned to us then, I think I explained it a bit. What it does is that when it comes to you granting access to what should be seen on report, there are certain things that you may want to do. And part of it is to see how you can restrict what some people would see on your report. So whenever you want to restrict, for instance, I have on this report now, sum of profit by sales rep. So I may want it that I want some people to only see what is meant for organic. So I don't want them to see for any other sales rep. So if I want them to see only organic, then I would need to apply some security on this report. So when we talk about row level security, there are two. It's either you're doing a static row level security or you're doing a dynamic row level security. Dynamic row level security will require you to write DAX to make it work. For a static row level security, you can do that right away from Power BI Desktop just by click of some buttons, and that will just work the way you want it. So let's look at the static row level security. So I'll come here to modeling. And when I'm on modeling, you see that we have a security group. So here I would say manage rows. And now it gives me this, and I want to say create. So now it's asking what's the name of this row. So let me call this organic sales. Okay. Then how do I want to apply this row? This row, where would be filter be coming from? So the filter will come from somewhere to restrict what is said on the report. So I'll say that the filter is coming from the sales team table. I'll say add filters, and then I wanted to add filters to the sales rep. So now it says that this row should work when the sales rep equals to what? So I'll change this to organic, and then I'll check this box to say okay. Then I'll click on save. So we have a row created now, but the role is not doing anything yet. So I'll come back here to security, that is under the modeling tab, security, then I'll say view as. So if I click on view as, so then I can select organic sales. So if I select organic sales and I do okay, so immediately you see that the entire report would now be showing things related to organic sales. So this may not make so much sense yet. So let me do something. So it's back to normal. So let me just add a few cards here. I'll do a card visual here. So just put this, let me resize this slightly. Then I'll put this card here, and then I'll make some copies. And on these guys, so let me just add some measures. So do the sales, call out value, make this 25. Yeah, so this one, I'll put a profit. This one, let me put quantity, is quantity here. Quantity. This, let me put discount. And this one would have the sales. Okay, so just quickly format printer, this, and this. All right, so let's go back, modeling, view as, organic sales. Okay, so keep your eye on these values. So now immediately you see that the values have changed. So I have 1.44, 183, 24K, 1K, and like that. And even my Q influencer, so I expect that to also be filtered accordingly. And this does not happen on this page alone. It should affect the entire report. So the whole report would have adjusted to what is meant for organic. So that is how this works. So we can go on to create some other rows. So if I say stop viewing, I go to manage rows again. And then I say create. And for this one, maybe I want to say, Mary Gerard. Mary Gerard sales. Then I'll come to the sales team, add filters to the sales rep column, but when this is equal to Mary Gerard. You need to be careful of the spelling. If the spelling is wrong, obviously you don't expect to say anything. So the spelling has to be the way it is on the table itself, because this is just more like you applying filters right from the table. So if I come here now to view as, see now that we have a new row called Mary Gerard, and I'll do OK. And we expect this to be filtered accordingly. All right. So this is, if I publish this report to the service, we would be able to see those rows, and we can select how we want to view. But this is static. The reason why this is static is because of the fact that users would be able to select what row, except if you have selected a row before you share with them. So that's the only thing they would see. But let's now assume that Mary Gerard changes her name to Madam Gerard. It means that whatever, no, that's not a practical example. So let's assume that the filter, the rows that we created has to do with department. And now Mary Gerard moved from sales department to operations department. Remember that because Mary Gerard has moved from sales to operations, she's not supposed to say reports of sales anymore. It's meant to only be reports of operations now. But because we did a static row level security, the reports that's been shared with her would still be for sales. That's what she will still continue to see, because we have only filtered down to sales, and that is what was shared with her. So if you want to make that dynamic, what you need to do is to, instead, we have a new table that would have the names of people, their email addresses. So the rows will now be tied to their email addresses, and we wire it up with DAX using the user principal name and the lookup function in DAX, And that is what would now filter the report to whatever as their email address. So email addresses tied to, now on, say we have a column for name, we have email address, and we have department. Now that department has changed from sales to operations. So it means now that on the table, we just need to update the table to say that maybe Gerald now belongs to operations department. And because we have wired the DAX to reference the email address and do all of those lookups, it will be able to sense that the department has changed, and that would dynamically give what report she's meant to see to her. So that is a dynamic row level security, but we need to understand our DAX properly to some extent before we can clearly understand how that works. So let me go back to the service and say, so this is looking crazy now. Just cancel this. And then let me just say something else. So if I come here to this setting, let me say maybe one wants me to configure this first. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. This is the gateway, but normally we're meant to configure the data set source credentials first. So if I go back to the data set, I'll do settings, then data source credentials, say edit this credentials, privacy level. So let me put it as none and sign in. So that is essentially how those work. And these other bits that I'm showing us, they are just things that have to do with development as a whole. So you don't necessarily need most of these if you're building reports internally. But when you want to start building reports for clients or at enterprise level, all of this will come in handy for you. So if you have any other questions, please let's push them forth. If you have any questions, let's ask our questions. And let me also just quickly make a request. I don't know, do we have all the links compiled somewhere that could be accessible if you share with me? Anybody who's managing that?
Sorry, do you mean links for the record?
Yes, the recordings.
Yes, I do.
You can.
So was that Abdul Samad or Wali?
I have up to the 9th week aside this.
Okay. So please, could you assist? Maybe it's on, I don't know how you want to share that. I just want everything put together, sessions 1 to 10, and you share with me. And okay, maybe you make it public so that I'll be able to access it.
Okay.
Thanks a lot for that. All right. So I don't know why this is taking a while. So what I will do is let me commit to some. So I will just this bit of how to configure the data set and schedule refresh. I would share some resource with us on that, so we see how that works, so that we don't get delayed while we want this to sign in. Thanks a lot, guys, everybody, for our endurance. I know learning can be very tedious, but it needs a lot of commitment from us. Let's practice as much as we can. That's the only way we can have this settled in properly. So let's practice, that's the key. And like I mentioned when we're starting, from now till the 31st of January, God willing, I'll make myself available for our queries. For some things you may not get instant answers to them because we are resuming soon back at work. But I'll make our time to attend to whatever challenges we are pushing forth. If while we're practicing, we encounter some roadblocks, ensure we use the group for that. Next month, I will be exiting the group, which means we will be closing our deal from next month. So I hope that we can maximize the remaining time we have together on that group. Thanks a lot, guys, and hopefully we see you at other times.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Man, please share our report.
Okay, I will share this from the. Please, when you compile everything together, you share it on the group.
Yeah. I'll do that first.
Yeah.
Thank you.
About Manchester.
Oh, go don't finish me for here.
Well, I shall send Jesse. Now the Manchester United, boy. Everybody send Jesse.
Jesse, their setup is not far from where I'm staying. It's trekking. Yes.
Oh, shit. I know that. I lost everybody.
Okay, now. No
Happy New Year.
Yeah, we should be safe. Yeah.